Imagine you're a girl so obsessed with villainesses in Otome games that you wake up and become one of them, especially your favorite, Alicia Williams. She's reincarnated as the villainess of her favorite game. What will she do? Will she rewrite her own story or fall in love? Possibly, but she's here to become the greatest villainess in history! And you won't believe the insane things she'll do to make her dream happen. And the very first thing on her list? Sword training! That's pretty intense for a 7-year-old girl, but let her cook. So she went straight to her brothers, who didn't take her seriously. Albert, her nicest brother, agreed to train her if she did 100 sit-ups and 50 push-ups daily for a week. Bro, that's impossible. I mean, just look at her. But who cares? She confidently accepted the challenge. Oh, by the way, in this world, only nobles have mana to cast spells. And the Williams family excels at dark magic, but magic isn't easy. And Alicia knows she's got to train hard. She dashed to the family library, but to her frustration, there were no books in magic. So she grabbed a book on plants and spent hours flipping through pages about herbs, glowing flowers, and even flying trees. The day flew by, and when she finally stopped, she realized she'd gone through a stack of books without even realizing it. Now it's time to build some muscle. When she tried her first set of push-ups, she could barely hit 50, but she pushed through, and soon enough, she was increasing the numbers every day. By the end of the week, she could do 500 sit-ups and 300 push-ups. Damn, this kid's built differently. I can't even manage 20. At breakfast, her dad asked what had gotten into her lately. She'd been waking up early, working hard, and acting differently. Alicia just smiled and said nothing had changed. But she knew she was acting like the scheming villainess she always wanted to be. Of course, she couldn't tell them she'd been reincarnated or something crazy like that. Soon, while looking for her brothers, Alicia spotted them hanging out with some familiar faces. The other game characters! It's easy to guess their magic based on their hair color. They kinda reminded me of Pokemon, by the way. I mean, look at this guy. Eric has red hair and is skilled in fire magic. Then there's Finn with his light magic. Gale the wind mage. Curtis, who isn't from one of the noble families but uses green magic. And finally, Prince Duke Seeker, the king's son, who wields water magic and ends up with the heroine in the game's good ending. Alicia kinda likes Duke since he's her favorite in the game, but she has no time for romance now. Besides, her main focus is to make a strong impression as a villainess. She gave a graceful curtsy, and the boys were shocked. Her brothers had made her out to be much rougher, but here she was, all prim and elegant. Duke wasn't impressed, focusing on swordplay with her brothers instead. But Alicia wasn't going to be ignored. She reminded her brothers about their promise to teach her swordsmanship, but they still weren't taking her seriously. So to prove them wrong, she quickly snatched the sword from one of her brothers, kicked the damn tree, and perfectly sliced a falling apple. What a badass! Albert finally agreed to train her, and because of her actions, she managed to rizz up the prince. A year later, he was visiting their house more and more. One day, as she was practicing, Duke asked her why she was so determined to learn swordsmanship. Alicia almost said, "To be a villainess," but caught herself. Instead, she said she wanted a villainously powerful grip. Duke chuckled and patted her head, which made her all flustered. Then Albert showed up and asked the prince why he'd been visiting so often. At first, he figured it was just for the books, but now he was starting to wonder if Duke had a thing for his little sister. The prince indirectly answered the question, but it was obvious that he already liked Alicia. Meanwhile, the king was dealing with bigger issues, such as the growing wealth gap in the kingdom. King Luke gathered the leaders of the 5 great noble families to discuss a village called Luana, where conditions were getting worse every year. Then Alicia got invited to a tea party with all the noble boys, and they had a surprise visitor, the king himself. And he straight up asked an 8-year-old a tough political question, like what king does that? He wanted to know what Alicia thought of the kingdom situation. Alicia saw this as a villainous test and confidently explained that while their kingdom Dirkus was a major power, it wasn't exactly a good nation. The rich were getting richer, and regular folks in places like Loana were barely surviving. And it was possible that an uprising could be around the corner if things didn't change. Everyone in the room was shocked. I mean, I'd be shocked too if these words came out of an 8-year-old. Alicia cooked on this one though. When the king asked how she'd fix it, Alicia suggested taking advantage of their neighbor Calvera's gold mines. Instead of going to war, she said they should secretly fund Calvera's independence and trade with him so Calvera would owe Dirkus a favor. The king even praised her for her ideas before leaving, and she finally relaxed, relieved. What was Alicia reading in the library anyway? Game of Thrones? Prince Duke seemed more interested in her after that, giving her a stunning diamond necklace for her birthday. Now, as the king left and walked through the halls, Lord Evans brought up that the golden rose had been found. So, what's that? It's a sign that things were about to change. You see, the golden rose is a sign of the kingdom's future savior. The rose belonged to a simple baker from the castle town. It appeared the day his daughter was born. And now the 5 great noble families understood what it meant. This girl is the saint, destined to guide the kingdom alongside its ruler, bringing peace and saving the world. This had happened before when the blue rose bloomed for Prince Duke. With both the saint and the prince leading the kingdom, they were sure the future would be bright. But the king knew that such great changes always came with a cost, like war and destruction. Back in Alicia's room, she's working out while wearing the diamond necklace Prince Duke gave her. Even though she knew this necklace would eventually go to the heroine, she's never giving it back. But will this necklace fall to the heroine? And whoever the heroine is, will she end up with the prince? Or maybe, this time, it will be Alicia. Now, our girl was planning to sneak into the village of Loana because she wanted to see the situation for herself. That night, she slipped into the village and discovered something awful. The place was way worse than the book described. It not only reeked, people without homes were sleeping outside on the ground. Then someone approached Alicia, a blind man named Will, and he seemed like a nice guy. They went to his house and, the crazy part? He somehow knew Alicia was a noble. But how? He's blind. He explained that he could tell by the sound of her footsteps, the rustle of her clothes, and the fact that she smelled way too clean for someone from the village. Damn, this guy is sharp. Will also recognized she was a noble because he used to work at the castle. But after talking back to someone way above him, he was punished by losing his sight and later banished to the village. Jeez, these nobles had no chill. Then it was Alicia's turn to share her story. And before she knew it, she was telling Will everything. Yeah, even her dream of becoming a villainess. As Alicia was about to leave the village, she promised to return. But Will disagreed, saying Loana was dangerous. Still, Alicia insisted. So, Will told her if she came back, she should only come at night. Time had passed and now our girl had grown a bit. Alicia mentioned that over the past couple of years, she'd been studying and learning swordsmanship to the point where she could now defeat her brothers. She's 10 times more badass than before. Oh, and she visited Grandpa Will regularly. She also explained that her brother Albert had turned 15 and entered the Magic Academy. She was sure Prince Duke and the heroine had probably already met, and she couldn't wait for the day she'd confront them as the villainess. While Alicia was thinking about this, Eric asked her to hang out in town. But of course, her brother Henry wouldn't let them go alone. When they got to town, they went to Paul's shop where he sells all sorts of plants. Mainly medicinal herbs though. Paul is a nice guy, and he said he opened the shop because he wanted to help people. He also showed them an interesting plant called Joshua. And as soon as Alicia saw it, Her inner nerd kicked in, and she quickly explained that just one spoonful of Joshua tea would bring down a fever instantly. Paul was impressed and asked if she was into plants. Alicia tried to say it in the most villainous way she could think of and said, "That's just common knowledge. Anyone who doesn't know it just hasn't studied enough." But Paul just laughed, and she realized she still needed to work on her villainess thingy. Paul then teased Eric, saying he shouldn't take it easy because he might soon have lots more rivals. But of course, Henry wouldn't let that happen. When they got home, Curtis joked that Eric was lucky for having a date with Alicia, while Duke just glared from the corner. Then Curtis asked Alicia if she'd go out with him next time. And yeah, Duke was still glaring away. Curtis asked what she wanted to do, and Alicia straight up said she wanted to take the swordsmanship test. Of course, her brother and dad were totally against it. Albert flat out said no, but Alicia wasn't having it. She walked out and slammed the door. The funny thing is, while her brother felt bad, Alicia wasn't actually mad. She was trying to look more villainous. Honestly, she was kinda evil for that one. The next day, as Alicia walked down the hallway, she overheard her father and brother talking about the real reason they didn't want her to take the swordsmanship test. Hearing this, she quickly opened the door and confronted them. But instead of answering her question, her father made her a promise. He said that once Alicia turned 15 and got into the Magic Academy, only then would they talk about it. Yet, what exactly was the real reason they didn't want Alicia to take the test? Well, let's just say Alicia's sword skills were already way beyond kid level. And if she took the test, she'd draw a lot of attention. Some good, some not so good. Albert added that the 5 great noble families already knew about her skills, so he doesn't think they can keep it hidden for much longer. Meanwhile, Alicia was still pissed, and to clear her head, she decided to visit Grandpa Will in broad daylight. As she visited the village, she saw an even darker side of things. People were fighting in the streets, and the villagers were even beating up a defenseless kid. She tried to help, but Will stopped her because he knew there was nothing Alicia could do. But Will still took the child into his house and treated his injuries. He said the boy wouldn't last long. Will knew this kid. His name was Jill, and he is an orphan. Even though Jill was just 6 years old, he was a very smart kid. Will mentioned that if Jill had gotten a proper education, he'd become a remarkable man. But the bad news is, children born in the village are already considered criminals. The next day, she went to Paul's shop to grab a Joshua plant. Paul wanted to help, so he gave it to her for free, as long as she promised to keep coming back. Back in the village, Will told her the medicine wouldn't heal Jill's injuries, but would keep him alive for a while. He thanked Alicia for her help. Then, out of nowhere, Alicia declared that she would become a villainess who would go down in history. Will, confused, had no idea what she was talking about. Alicia, fired up, went home and rushed to the library. As she did so, her magic seemed to trigger a hidden section of the library, and surprisingly, she finally discovered magic books. She immediately started reading and practicing spells, kind of like an anime version of Wingardium Leviosa. In just a few days, Alicia could already move multiple bookshelves at once with her magic. But she worked so hard she didn't sleep, and it was catching up to her. She even had a headache. Then her father called for her, telling her the king wanted to see her again. When Alicia met with the king and the 5 great nobles, the king got straight to the point and asked what she thought about how the kingdom was run. Alicia, without hesitation, said she hated how the whole system was rigged in favor of the nobles. Everyone was stunned, and some of the nobles looked pretty offended. But the king just waved it off and told her to keep going. She pointed out that no matter how talented commoners are, they're never granted any real opportunities, and so Much talent is wasted because of the magic-based class system. She added that it was so foolish, it gave her a headache. Then the king asked the final question. Did she understand that this included her as well? Would she be okay with being kicked out of the 5 great noble families? Alicia confidently replied that she was fully aware. She said she was lucky to be born into a noble family, and it wouldn't be right to keep her status if there were more talented people who deserved it. The king noted that Alicia was something else. After meeting, as Alicia walked down the hallway, she suddenly felt ill. Good thing Duke caught her before she fell. Albert saw and insisted they get her to her room, but Duke was determined to carry her himself. When she woke up, Duke tried to give her some medicine, but she was too weak to take it herself. So, the only way Duke could get her to take it was by drinking it himself and passing it to her. And yeah, they kinda kissed. What the heck is going on? To find out what happens next, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.